Afternoon and welcome to Cloud.Nine on ACT and The Voice. I am Sheldon Yearwood and thank you for joining us. Know there's a scripture that speaks of there's a time to pull down and a time to build. And one thing that I've realized over the past couple of weeks as it pertains to the budget, people have been all over social media pulling down, but nobody wants to build on some of the things that have been mentioned. And if we are to truly build and restore, because it speaks about restoration as well, you know me, everything is based on the biblical perspective. If we have to restore, then we also have to understand there comes a point you have to pull down things. And when we say pull down, you mean things that are unnecessary, things that may have been flawed, things that we need to address that may be very negative. You know, these are things that we pull down to restore. And, you know, with me coming up after the break, we have someone from the Ministry of Planning and Development as they speak about their Vision 2030, not 2020, 2030, as it pertains to development of Trinidad and Tobago. I know this is a very sensitive topic for many people, and I'm really grateful that they have, you know, given us the time and the space to address this issue in terms of their vision. And the hope that they are having, or they have rather, is that their vision is in alignment with the vision of the people. They would have done their research, they would have heard the cries of the people in terms of these issues surrounding this area, that's Tongue and Country, under the ministry. And we are hoping that even on or before 2030, some of these, you know, visions will bear good fruit. So let's take a short break. When we come back, we have our special guest on set with us as we talk about Vision 2030 as outlined in the 2018 budget under the Tongue and County, the Planning Division in the Ministry of Planning and Development. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're now changing your question.
What I would say, Steve, is this.
My first question was, and roll back that tape.
I made my debut for Crystal Palace against Tottenham Hotspur.
My responsibility was to get the ball and make things happen offensively.
All about that something.
In all the time we've played together, I've always been the decoy.
Welcome to Field of Dreams on ACTN. My name is Steve David, and I'm your host.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACT, and it's always a pleasure to be in your company every Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 and 9.
Welcome to the new season of Football 101. I am your host, Joshua Matos.
Well, it's time for your weekly football news update. I love you, Messi.
Unfortunately,
hey, kiss the badge, kiss the badge. Oh,
what's that?
welcome to this edition of the interview, and as you can see, I'm not alone on the set. I have Marcus, a Liverpool fan, and I have Shakir.
And right, and welcome back to Cloud.Nine on ACTN The Voice. This is our Let's Chat segment. And at this time, I want to introduce to you my special guest for this afternoon, Mr. Clyde Watch, the Acting Director of the Town and Country Planning Division in the Ministry of Planning and Development. A pleasant good afternoon to you, sir.
Same to you.
And thank you for joining us on the program. And welcome to South. Yes.
Thank you.
He came all the way from West San Grande. It's a beautiful area, trust me. So thank you for coming. And we're talking about Vision 2030 as outlined in the budget under the Town and Country Planning Division. Tell me why 2030? What exactly is this vision all about that you would like to bring forth to the nation today?
Well, firstly, the Vision 2030 is the government's national strategic development plan for the sustainable development of the country. It is a framework for positive planning. It's a framework for policy development, and it clarifies, the goals and the objectives for sustainable development in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a document to guide all development in all sectors in the country. So that's the value of a document like that. It guides what the country does, what each ministry does. And Town and Country Planning Division, as one of the ministry, or division within the Ministry of Planning and Development, has a key role to play as a land use and a spatial planning agency to the achievement of those goals. Yeah.
Okay, what are some of the handicaps that the division, and I use that word very guarded, handicaps that the division would have experienced over the decades in the implementation of some of these measures in terms of proper planning, proper development? I know that the list is probably as long as my arm and back, but I know that the division would have had some handicaps over the years. Can you just outline what some of those would have been and how you all plan to rectify them now with this Vision 2030?
Well, the division is responsible for development planning, integrating the economic, social, and environmental interests into the planning process. And again, that is part of the Vision 2030 document, and objective is to integrate economic, social, and environmental interests in development. The vision is also responsible for development management or development control, which is assessing development applications, whether it's for residential purposes, commercial, different types, industrial, and seeing that those are in line with plans and policies. So the vision engages in development planning and development control. The vision also coordinates and coordinates projects with other ministries and advises on ministries on planning issues, other ministries. So we have that relationship with our stakeholders, other ministries, other agencies, and the general public.
And you mentioned general public, so we were speaking even before the show started about people who have to wait very long when it comes to getting the right documentation or the paperwork in place to develop and to plan. With all of these things being addressed in relation to this, I want to say, closer relationship with the other ministries, are you planning to address that as well?
Certainly, because and as you mentioned, some of the issues we have had, I would not. The fact is that people have been complaining about the service delivery over time through
and not just in this era, yeah.
So it's something we have been trying to address. We have had successes, but sustaining it over time has been challenging. We have had times when we have progressed, but sometimes it slows down.
So I guess it's on both the public and the division, or what are some of the kinks that you all are trying to work out with in the division itself?
Well, in terms of service delivery, we have been looking at our work processes. We have been looking at staffing issues in terms of resourcing with the
as in qualified staff or just short qualified staff?
Qualified staff in terms of numbers too, because we have been below our targeted human resource numbers in terms of getting work done. We have persons on board are relatively new, so the learning curve issue is there. It takes time to learn and get, efficient in terms of what you do. So those are some of the challenges. We operated an act since 1969. The world has changed, so we need to look at the act, because we are governed by a Town Country Planning Act.
So that act,
35.
That act in 1969 has over the, well, we can say what, 30, 40 years plus. How many revisions have been made towards that act, or any additions, or it hasn't really been altered much?
Well, currently we have a Planning and Facilitation of Development Act, which has been partially proclaimed, and work is being done. A review is being done to bring the act into operation. So it's a work in progress. But there is recognition that we need to have new laws to deal with the changing times, the changing economic realities. People have different demands, the demographics are different, so you have to move.
More development.
So the act has to be revised, and I said that is happening as part of the reform of the planning system.
Because we live in a time whereby, as you mentioned, it's a fast-paced world, and if the ministry, well, the government an extension, if we don't keep up, then therefore we're going to be trying to deal with issues of 1969 laws in 2017.
Certainly.
And I've seen, I have had my experiences as well, and I know it's not no fault on the division itself, but it is something that need to look at from a broader perspective.
And we have a national spatial development strategy that was developed recently. Again, its aim is to replace a national physical development plan that was done many years ago. And again, in terms of the changes in the world, global changes, and you have issues of climate change and trade issues, economic kinds of issues that cross borders. So our physical plan has to move in line, our spatial planning has to move in line with the new realities. So we have a new spatial development strategy that again is being reviewed and tweaked at this point in time.
Now, you mentioned a lot about the environment, and I know you said that you're working closely with other agencies, other ministries. One of the concerns that I've heard many times, I don't know how much you could address on this, from various NGOs, stakeholders who are very much, concerned about the environment, would be the laws. The laws are not, how should I say, they're not glued to the hearts of those who make them. People could go and do whatever they want to the environment, and whether you put it on social media, it's highlighted, nobody is, of course, held accountable for it. One, have you all had meetings with the Ministry of National Security and others as well about dealing with these issues, and how is it being looked to? Because again, it is a major concern, not just in the rainy season, but throughout the year.
But as an agency that regulates the use and the development of land, we would agree that Trinidad and Tobago is a small island. It's not a frontier island, and land is limited. And making decisions on land would be difficult, and complexity is inevitable. In a regime where, as I said, land is limited, and there are competing interests for lands, for residential use, for industrial use, for agriculture use, and many other kinds of uses.
And not the right procedures are implemented all the time.
And so the issue of the environment is critical. The land is actually the wealth, and that brings the economic and social development. So we need to manage, the land resources wisely. The EMA, Environmental Management Authority, is the principal agency that deals with environmental matters. It's part of the Ministry of Planning and Development now, and the EMA is like the watchdog for environmental issues. I know there's a national environmental policy that has been developed. I can't speak the details, but
sure, that's fine.
Obviously there's the recognition that at the heart of all development is the environment. That's the ministry's position. We cannot talk sustainable development without considering the environment, how we use and treat with the environment. It is what creates wealth.
Right. And that's a major part, he said, of this Vision 2030.
Exactly. It's a major theme, a major message in the Vision 20.
So should we hope to see stiffer laws and penalties where this is concerned, because it's a question on people's lips?
Well, we should.
Okay.
Because as I said, if this is the direction we are going, and in recognition that everything we do is dependent on environment, we need to treat the environment with you know, that respect and the fact that it's every environment affects us. Everything we do is, you know, is related to the maintenance and the integrity of the natural environment.
In terms of consultation in the planning and the implementation of this Vision 2030, how broad was the consultation? Like, who were the different, just generally, in terms of, did you also meet with, outside of the stakeholders in terms of business and governance, did you also meet with, you know, the man on the street, quote unquote, to address some of these concerns in putting together and formulating this vision?
Yes. You may remember there was the Vision 2020 document some years ago, and that vision and the document, the statements, those were developed from a lot of consultation. There was consultation throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a document that would have been looked at in terms of looking at the Vision 2030.
So 2030 document would have been somewhat developed off of the platform of 2020 and just developed from there. Okay.
Also, the United Nations has its Sustainable Development Goals. And that's, as I said, United Nations. There are 17 goals outlined in that document, and it's across all sectors. It deals with environment, it deals with poverty, it deals with governance, it deals with a host of themes that are relevant to sustainable development, again related to socio-economic development, again putting people at the center of development.
Right.
So poverty, including health issues, a whole range of issues. So our Vision 2030 document and strategic development plan would have been aligned to the national, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So that would have been critical in our strategic objective. Yeah.
Well, what I like from what I've been hearing so far is that, you know, from what I gather, the extensive arms that have gone on to reach the different agencies, and this is not just a town and country planning thing, but it is incorporating every stakeholder, including, as you said, the various communities and the individuals.
All the ministries. As I said, it's integrating all the sectors, the economic, the social, environmental interests.
Feedback, right.
So you have many ministries that have different roles to play. You have civil society,
which is important. People tend to disregard that aspect.
People and environment and people issues.
Right.
So all those have been considered, and those agencies and those organizations would have been consulted in the development of the strategy.
Scheme of things.
Yeah, so that you have buy-in and there's a greater likelihood that the objectives would be achieved over time.
You know, one thing that came up as well in our conversation, the whole concept of building codes and people not adhering to building codes. And this is a major issue throughout TNT. I can speak for Chaguanas and San Fernando in particular, because I've worked in the two areas for a number of years. And I had a tour with the mayor of San Fernando recently, and he literally called out businesses that, you know, because of where they constructed their buildings, it's like a domino effect. You have poor drainage, you have now a roadway, you have... So if we are to have sustainable development, then we have to sustain, quote unquote, these measures that you're talking about. What we have happening is that many of these, and we're talking about big business, not about who have a little parlor here or this here, big business who are involved in this. How do we deal with that? Because when these businesses are already taking root, it's kind of hard to uproot them sometimes. And I can only imagine the challenge to deal with this is moving forward. How do we ensure now that this does not continue? Because it would affect the vision. It would literally blind you all in terms of what you'll want to do. So how do you plan to address that issue?
Well, and as you mentioned, that one of the messages in the vision relates to values, attitudes, behaviors, and the rule of law. And one of the goals is to get citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to understand that the rule of law must prevail.
Right.
We must operate in a manner that does not negatively impact on the environment, because if it impacts on the environment, in fact, we are going to suffer. So that is a message that has to be, that's in the Vision 2030 document, and is a message that has to be spread throughout Trinidad and Tobago through various means, various communication means. In terms of what you're speaking there, unauthorized development, it's all over Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, we see it every day. From a town country planning perspective, all development require planning permission. So
that's a scary thing. What happens? What happens to the point whereby, you know, because clearly they were allowed to build. So how can the ministry now deal with this issue? Well, the division, sorry, I should say.
So the issue of public education, I think it's critical. I think while people do things deliberately, knowing that it's illegal, I think some people don't know. And part of the message in terms of achieving the objective is having a greater
awareness and education
with the public, and awareness, dealing with the public. We go to schools, so public education, public information is critical, and that is one of the objectives. That is an aim that the vision has. We have an enforcement unit that take action when we see unauthorized illegal development and when we receive complaints. Because a lot of time we receive complaints from persons who are affected by illegal development. You know, people build close to their boundaries, their roofs extend onto their property, they take away their light, persons build right up to the walls, and you know, people have nuisance kinds of uses. You know, garages, they're doing woodwork in residential areas, you have noise, dust. So we receive those kinds of complaints. So we would investigate, and we would advise those persons who are in breach of, you know, planning control, as we call it, to, you know, to cease the operation and come in and talk to us to see how we can remedy the situation. The process is long, it's lengthy, and persons complain, well, they don't see results. But as I said, we have to operate in an environment where we have to follow process. And as I said, it's all over Trinidad. We are at times under-resourced, and that is a matter we are because you would imagine
or the handicaps in the beginning.
Yes, to man the entire country.
Because some people I see have done as well. They may have adhered to the own country, and you know, but over time they would add on and they would
exactly.
And the thing is, it is. I know it's difficult to be a watchdog every day. You know, and I know that, you know, is one of the
and we would have approved development meeting specific performance criteria, and after the development is implemented,
they do their own thing.
Persons go and add and extend without, you know, getting permission.
Right.
Another ministry, which is the Ministry of Local Government, I mean, they have an important role to play. Under the Municipal Corporation Act, the local government can stop construction. They can issue stop notice, show cause notice, why they shouldn't be, the building shouldn't be demolished. And they can take swifter action. They are on the ground. You have all the regional corporations and city corporations. They at the ground, they are at the level where they see these things happen.
And again, this is where the partnership
daily.
is to intensify the partnership, I should say, is really
so we
important.
have to strengthen the relationship.
Yeah.
Part of the new planning regime and the reform with respect to the bill, the act, the Planning and Precision Development Act, is devolving some of those responsibilities, the planning responsibilities, to the local authorities, right? So that should bring planning closer to the community. So issues of building approvals and dealing with enforcement matters and illegal development, those things can be more efficiently and effectively handled at the local level. And I would like to say, some persons believe that when you receive planning permission from Town Country Planning, it allows you to go and develop immediately or implement development, and this is not the case.
Right.
Our planning permission is generally conditioned in that you may have to get the permission of the Ministry of Works for a particular kind of development. You may have to, in all instances, the grant of permission has to be, it's conditioned by the, meeting Ministry of Local Government standards in terms of the Municipal Corporation Act. So we send our approvals based on land use and meeting certain site development standards, the plans to the local government, and the local government body, through their building inspectors and their public health people, to see that the development is implemented according to the permission. So we are not always aware of what is happening after it leaves us, because the implementation stage and the final permission to really implement the project and begin the construction is with the local government authority.
Wow.
It is not with Town Country Planning.
That is really important information. I'm really glad that you had a chance to share that aspect of it, because sometimes people will blame you all because it falls under the purview of another agency. So I'm glad that you made mention of that.
Because the other agency has to see about the structural integrity of the building, so the building
so you all
regulations.
approve in terms of monitoring. That's something very.
So in terms of site development standards, distance from boundaries, and your height, we do those kinds of things.
Right.
But determining the integrity of the building in terms of the engineering, it's not our forte. That's the building inspectors, the engineers, and the corporations, and the public health issues, the sewer system.
Right.
The water, the drainage in terms of development, whether it's for erection of a building or whether it's for subdivision of land for residential development, a layout, those standards are determined by the relevant corporation.
As we wrap things up, and I'm really so grateful that you're able to shed light on so many things today. You also have people who build, of course, on the mountains and so on. That's another issue by itself. I know that you all grapple with. In terms of the vision, is this something that would be made available to the public eventually, or how would it be done? Because I know you have some more things you'd like to just share with us before we close.
I would just like to mention the goals of the Vision 2030. I'll just know them. One of the first goals is people first, nurturing assets, people, and caring for the vulnerable in society. And that approach, dealing with that, is a multidimensional approach, and it involves provision of housing, provision of education facilities, recreational facilities, and opportunities for growth. And lasting prosperity in any country has to do with education.
Agreed.
Things like health. So the vision deals with those issues, and as a planning agency, we work with our sister agencies, we work with HGC, we work with private developers to develop communities and provide and facilitate development of all these facilities and quality infrastructure for sustainable development.
I just want to touch quickly on something you mentioned in terms of schools. I know there was an issue. I won't stay long on this. The Princestown East, I believe, and the school was constructed in such a manner that there wasn't much ventilation. All the AC units is down, and it's costing the ministry millions to install. How do we now address these matters moving forward as it pertains to school? Because people are asking how come a school was constructed in such a manner. If you can just touch on that quickly, I don't know if you can.
The issue of building and design. Currently, there's a committee dealing with building codes and designs and looking at how we design and keeping in mind the environment. There's also a committee the town country planning is involved in terms of creating and designing green buildings. And we are a major stakeholder. So the output from those, that kind of cooperation would be developing building codes that take into consideration environmental issues, the use of, how we water, we use sustainable energy concepts, ventilation, how we control heat, those kinds of things.
Nice.
So there is that recognition and that relationship is taking place. Good governance is one of the goals, again, and service excellence. And we cry for service here, and we would know, and I would say that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is seeking to develop a closer nexus between its objectives and service delivery in a manner that represents value for money. That's important. So governance is critical. In terms of governance, at Town Country Planning Division, and service delivery, we have a project that's ongoing, and it's with the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the IDB, and we are at the procurement stage of service provider with respect to automation of the construction permitting process. That has to do with construction, the service delivery. It has to do with competitiveness, because as we are concerned about investment and productivity, so development approvals, it must be timely if we are to compete in a global environment. If we are to ensure that people receive, service on time. So this is a flagship project too that with two ministries, and the aim is to have online. It's part of government e-biz and e-business agenda, and the aim is to really have approvals, building approvals, more efficient, timely, short time span. Online submissions. You can submit all your building plans, they're assessed. Different agencies that are responsible for saturating for approvals, local government, WASA,
they're
fire,
all tapped into the system.
all
and
tapped in. So they can receive the application and
within minutes.
Within minutes, and assessment can be done simultaneously. So the outcome would be that service is delivered, and people would get, their
that's really great news for the public.
And I said it's related to economic development. It's related to competitiveness.
Of course, because once you address this quickly, then therefore you're going to see a growth in the economy, because there'll be growth in business, because there will be now confidence will be built as well. Great.
There'll be transparency.
I agree.
Quality infrastructure, again, is one of the Vision 2030 goals, and it has to do with both physical infrastructure and social infrastructure. As I said, it has to do with roads, bridges, in terms of physical infrastructure, and the social infrastructure, as I said, schools, hospitals, libraries, all of those things. Building competitive business and investment, building environment and investment environment, and it has to do again with our approval process, our land use planning, how we allocate lands for different uses. And we are always seeking to increase the land supply for development.
I know that illegal squatting has hampered that somewhat, but I know that also is something.
But in terms of land
ongoing.
use, in terms of the land use, so we are mindful that there are sensitive areas, there are watershed areas, our hillsides are sensitive areas, watershed areas. We have protected areas, and we have a protected area policy that's being finalized. And we are mindful that we have to do development mindful that these areas are sensitive. They provide value ecosystem services, and they need to be preserved. And we have to be mindful that we cannot use them or indiscriminately.
Right.
Value in environment, again, it's part of that whole issue, again, as I mentioned, with protected area and climate change. Climate change is a major challenge for most countries, most small island development states, and you would realize that a lot of our people live on coasts, on the coastline. We are small countries. Our investments, our economic infrastructure, our ports, our hotel, our tourism, everything, and the products that we use for tourism, it's on the coast. Even in Trinidad, our infrastructure, housing, our energy, the energy sector, you have Point Lisa, so it's along the coast. So, and we have a lot of settlements along the coast.
Which has to be addressed, yeah.
So climate change is a major policy area that has to be addressed. And our planning has to take into consideration
all of
the possible causes that and the activities and the way we behave that will deal with climate change. So climate change mitigation and adaptation is critical, and it's key in terms of the vision and sustainable development.
Yeah, Mr. Watch, I want to thank you very much for coming on the program today. It was truly enlightening, and I'm sure that the public, they have been truly sensitized about what you all are doing, and also you can't blame them for everything. And everybody have their part to play. It also cleared up some things for me as well. And I really hope, as you said, based on what seeds you all have planted in with this development and this vision, that it grows and bears good fruit.
There's just one thing I would like to mention,
Go ahead.
which goes across the board, the issue of housing, and it came up in the budget debate, because housing is a challenge for people. And you mentioned squatting, and squatting might be a reaction to lack of housing.
Exactly, yeah.
Either land or housing. And the government has a program for affordable housing and meeting the target for housing. You have a change in demographics where people leave home, they don't stay home as long, and people want to live on their own. So there is the program to cater for different tenure types, rent to own, you live on flats, different types of housing to suit different pockets.
And this is being continuously looked at, because people are going to hear this and they're still going to say, you know what, they're still...
No, it's being looked at in terms of, and that is in terms of affordability.
Right.
You have mentioned that there is incentive for housing development, and the Town Country Planning and the Ministry of Finance have worked on developing a strategy where there's a tax incentive, it was mentioned, for
yes, I remember that, yeah,
for developers who can provide housing, more multi-family dwelling units to help meet the housing targets.
And this will be effective when?
Well, the details have to be finalized, but it is something that has been decided. We have planned to increase densities in certain areas. It's related to what I just said, and town centers where you redevelop lands. I mean, urban land is expensive. You have a flat in urban land, 2 apartments. So if your land in an urban area, you might be able to get 3, possibly 4 units on a plot once you meet some site development standards, parking and those kinds of things. So there are different strategies. There's public-private sector arrangement in terms of house building too, and in terms of meeting housing targets. So the Town Country Planning, as the land use agencies and as the agency that regulates land use and in terms of site development standards, we are key to that process in terms of releasing land, deciding how many units you will get on a particular plot, where you will get it. And so we are key to the whole process. We try to link housing in terms of a land use transport strategy where you try to increase densities in areas where you have easy access to transport. It has to do with people using less cars. It has to do with climate change, reducing your carbon footprint, and using public transport so that people don't less cars on the road, there's less emissions. Those
that has always been a challenge, but again,
so part of the housing
vision,
strategy and the land use and housing strategy has to be looking at development in areas where you have high accessibility and close to major transportation nodes.
You know, one thing I'm listening to, and I'm really hoping that, you know, the public is really on board and in the boat with you, all of us, and it's going to row in the same direction, not in the opposite direction. Because again, everything you say there, you know, it is a lot to undertake, and the public must work hand in hand with you to the division to ensure that it comes to pass. So
and we are committed to having a communication process with the public to keep the public abreast of what's happening. It's part of our service delivery also. It's not just persons applying for development, but just information that is providing a service. And I said, the goals we envisage that that the goals will be achieved on a phase basis. Yeah.
Well, I do support the vision, and I hope everyone is on board to support it. Mr. Watch, thank you so very much. This has truly been a wonderful interview. And again, this is Vision 2030 for the planning and development of Trinidad and Tobago as outlined in the 2018 budget. And I'm going to close with this. Row with them. Don't row against them. Because again, they have their challenges just as I'm sure you do, just as so I have. But if we work together, it can be done for the future of Trinidad and Tobago. Let's take a short break. Right back.
The devil's the accuser of the brethren. And he hates marriage because marriage is the image of God. He hates marriage is because it's the most sacred institution on earth. God created marriage in Genesis chapter 1. It is the first institution he ever created, and it's the foundation for every other institution on earth. And he's a strategist. He understands if he can destroy marriage, he can destroy all of society.
All right, welcome back to Cloud.Nine on ACTN, The Voice. Yes, I went from pink to white. Those studied the magic of television, the miracle of television. Anyhow, so I want to touch on something quickly. Again, thanks, of course, to our guest from the Town and Country Division. Really pertinent information that you received there in terms of planning and the vision that they have, the 2030 vision, not 2020, 2030 vision. And he was making the point that a lot of concentration went into the 2020 and some of that just sort of spilled over into the new vision for 2030 because they've met with so many people over the last few years and they now have this comprehensive report which they're going to bring to the people. And of course, we are hoping that many of these issues that we've been facing with planning and development in Trinidad and Tobago will come to naught, right? So I want to touch on something that happened recently as it relates to school violence. Now, there is this particular video circulating on Facebook of a teacher that, you know, as I say, pow, yeah. As you say, a busy clout to a young man. No, there are those who are chastising the teacher for what he did. Let me say from the get-go, I don't approve of a teacher inflicting such, a level of punishment, if you want to call it that, on a student. However, I would say this, you do not know the level of frustration some teachers are under at these schools. Because I listened to a program this morning and someone, I don't know the individual's name, but he has been in Young Achievers for almost 40 years. And he was a teacher and is very much involved. And he says that it has come to a place many years now where it has gone beyond the teacher just being a teacher, but teacher is now teacher, parent, counselor, grandfather, uncle, cousin, everybody. Everybody. And that's not now. That's happening since I go into school, which is, don't try and guess my age, right? So you all have to understand the level of frustration when there is no support system. Because quite frankly, the teachers, many times, they do not have a support system to help them deal with what they're going through with some, because again, these children are coming with so many baggage. And when they rest that baggage on top of the teacher's baggage, and then they have all other baggage to deal with, then therefore many of them going home spiritually bossy back. And then now you want them to stand straight and stand tall and don't, at the end of the day, they are human just like you and I. And I believe at that point, that teacher snapped. All right? Because if you heard the video, he said, and look at something very interesting. At no point in time did those two boys fight back or even attempt to say answer back or grand charge. No. Because like they're accustomed. But who is doing what? Who is really assisting? And this is something we cannot ignore. That these teachers, many of them, they are left hung to dry by the same parents who do not deal with some of these issues at home. And then they want the teachers to be miracle worker. They want them to be God in some cases and rectify all the problems. Better you come to the school and say, listen, this is my situation. I don't know how to deal with it. I need deal with it. I need some help. Can you lead me in the right direction? And that is what is not happening. There needs to be a more collaborative effort and approach in addressing these issues. There's another one with a girl. I don't know if you saw that one, Giles, that one with the girl. I don't know what school. Yeah, the primary school. That's just ridiculous. No, I mean, so listen, at the end of the day, parents, know your role. You are not, you are parent, you are mommy, you are daddy. And I'm not saying father and mother. When you say mommy and daddy, there's an intimacy to it. Start being mommy and daddy to these children. And don't expect the teachers to do everything. If you have a problem, bring it to their attention. I am sure they will try to help you, but no. You stay silent, and silent is deafening. And the last deafening cry you're going to hear is if somebody actually retaliates and kills your son or daughter. That'll be the last deafening cry that you hear. So be mindful. Be very, very mindful. Because I think it was Prayers Sanford had a skit whereby they showed the vicious cycle. If you bully someone, they will snap at it and they will kill the bully. And that's the reality. Like bad boy from Superior. Yeah. You understand? Only be very careful. Turn all the lies around. Because all the boys, and the people they thumping up on, there could come a day that they will snap. Parents, stop making excuses for your children. Stop it. Stop it. Because at the end of the day, you'll be the one holding your head and bawling. And on that note, I'll go close because I could go on and I'll get more emotional. So let me wrap. So that brings us to the end of our program today. Thanks, of course, to our guest. We're going to close things off with this very wonderful song indeed, and I do hope you have enjoyed the rest of your evening. And I'll see you once again right here, same time, same channel. Love you. God bless you.